And it was, I think they were in for a real shock when the real Africans came in there. And it was wonderful. We woke them up. I'm hoping that they'll be joining us soon. Anyway, we've probably got time for about, how many questions? Yeah? Okay, we can take 3 to 5 questions, so as long as people keep it brief. And if you address your questions to the brother.
Thanks for the presentation. I just really wanted to make a short contribution, if you don't mind. First of all, I think I learned quite a bit, actually, from watching and listening to your presentation. But really what I wanted to say, and it's been mentioned already by Sister Nzinga, was, and I'm saying this because I've spoken to people from Ghana, and in fact a couple of young sisters only the other day, is the impact of the Most Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey in the early development that actually propelled and helped enforce the idea of liberation for Ghana. So much so that in the Ghana flag, the star in the flag is actually in memory and celebration of Marcus Mosiah Garvey's Black Star Liner. So I think it's important for us not to forget that, and for people that perhaps are not aware of that, to mention that so people can see that connection and the love and respect he had for the first national hero of Jamaica. And then I do have to mention this, we're not all fans of Obama, because I think you made a point in your presentation about Obama and said something along the lines of, we all love the guy. Well, as Pan-Africans, I'd have to definitely say no, no, and no again. Thanks.
Take another question.
I'd like 2 questions, but they'll be real quick. One, I'd like you to speak a little bit about the Young Pioneers movement. And secondly, what caused the insensitivity in Nkrumah where he couldn't identify the forces that was working against him toward the latter part of his life?
Okay. There are 2 issues about Nkrumah. First, let me talk about the Young Pioneer movement. The Young Pioneer movement, as people came to call it, was an ungodly movement. This was what people came to call it, because it was that movement that propagates the idea that Nkrumah never dies. Nkrumah is infallible. Nkrumah does all things right. At the time of independence, there were several movements in our country that dealt with young people. There were Christian movements. So we had the Boys Brigade, and we had the Boy Scouts, Girls Guides. All these people were doing was actually inculcating as Eurocentric views of how we were shaped and how we were developed. There was also the Young Muslim Association. What Nkrumah did was that he got the leaders of these organizations together, the priests, and he said, go to Hungary and go to Russia and come back and tell me what is done for youth development in those countries. Because Nkrumah also had a belief, and it's a belief that we are failing in this country, that when children go to school in the morning and they come home in the afternoon, they need a structured activity. Because if you leave them after school, they just unlearn everything they've learned during the day, and the next day they go to school again with their minds totally empty. So the Young Pioneer movement was about a leadership movement for young people based on religious principles, that's bringing Christians together and Muslims together. It was headed by a Muslim guy, Z.B. Shadow. The assistant was a Christian priest who actually set up a movement that will provide structured activity for young people after school. It was voluntary. Some of us had to go and volunteer to sweep the streets, but they were training us in leadership. They would have to volunteer to learn woodwork. Would have to volunteer how to bake bread, how to do all those things. We're not doing it within the home setting. We're actually going to workshops, so actually doing modeling, art, anything. But because that movement became the pride of everybody, and we all had our scarves and our trousers and bell bottom, it was then the height of fashion with our big belts, and we would march better than the soldiers because we had our own swagger. Everybody said that this is an ungodly movement. And then Nkrumah ran into a problem with one of the Anglican priests, Roosevelt, who unfortunately went and pronounced. And then when the Anglicans recalled him into this country, because priests were not supposed to get involved in political, his opponents used it against him, that this was an ungodly movement. Roosevelt was sent back to Ghana to apologize to Nkrumah. Now there was something about Nkrumah. You see, when you are the only child of your mother and your father, sometimes you are not worldly wise about when people are listening. All he got was sufficient. He wasn't as streetwise as people saw him to be. So when there was all these plots against him, he could not fathom them. Because when you live in a big household and there's intrigue and everything, he just saw himself as a simple man. He worked from morning till night. Those were only the things that he wanted. He didn't want, I'm sure that he liked a lot of beautiful women, which was always a failing of our big men. But he didn't want any, it was a showboy. He didn't want any riches or anything. He died a poor man. The state had to build a house for his wife and children because he had no home. He could not, he was, what I'll say that, he was naive to the point of not even accepting it. When I was in Nkrumah overthrow, his classmate at Lincoln, Franklin Williams, was sent to Ghana as the ambassador in January. And he was the person who persuaded Nkrumah to go on the trip to Hanoi. Because originally he wanted the Vietnamese people and the Americans to come to Ghana for him to arbitrate on the war. His classmate did not know that he was being set into a trap. Well, people say he knows, but that man also left the American Foreign Service, and he spent the rest of his life doing penance in terms of doing community work, because he was so shocked that this happened on his watch. So, even when, and if you read all things from the CIA, when the CIA were talking to Nkrumah about complaining, and he was complaining about them, he just could not understand that the people were actually working to overthrow him. He couldn't believe that there was that kind of intrigue. And I only bring the fact that maybe he was his mother's only child, and therefore wasn't aware of the intrigue. That's that. Do some justice.
Well, thank you for that. Now we're going to take, there's two hands up, we're going to take these two questions and then we're going to close down for the next three. Three? Yeah. So we've got one here and one there. We'll take Angeline today.
I'm not going to pose a question. I just wanted to reply to what the sister was saying about Obama. Being South African, when you are black, you are black. And there is another race that is mixed race that is separated from the blacks. And then the whites and the Indians. Obama's, why we like Obama, for what we as black South Africans, because Obama brought his black family from Kenya, and from Kenya, from Kenya into the White House. Now that was beamed across South Africa. Normally, the colors, mixed races of South Africa, haven't got any black mothers. They have the black rapist on the wall to prove that is their origin. And it was Obama who made it show that you can have a white mother and have a black father and have a black stepmother and aunts and everything who are black. For that, it moved the psychology of some of the colors to a point where the grandmother, who was living in the servants' quarters, is now being recognized as the grandmother of this family. Once upon a time, before Obama, she was the nanny who looked after us after our mother died.